So the last few videos that we had, we've just been doing talking and educating on different things that we've picked up along the way. And that's because we're in Milwaukee here and we've been here since May. And so we're not doing any traveling. And a number of weeks ago, we did a video that we wrapped up all 61 months of the time that we've been on the road and put all the costs together in a spreadsheet. And it's really valuable information when you're first thinking about RVing and you want to see how expensive it's going to be. Now, I will tell you that you would be hard pressed to be doing it as expensive as we are, because I don't do a lot of the repairs myself and we kind of stay exactly where we want to stay. We're not a member of the Thousand Trail system, which is an immense savings that you might want to check into. So I just wanted to caution you when you look at that so you don't get scared away. Then one of the other things a couple of weeks later we did is we investigated on how it worked out for us on a fictitious snapshot in time, where all of a sudden we said, okay, time to sell our rig. How much did it cost us on the life cycle of the whole 61 months? And we compared that to as if we would have bought new in 2016 June when we bought our Dutch Star versus the 2014 used model that we actually bought. Before we go inside, I want to show you what our cargo looks like. This here normally is a bay that would have a freezer, and it would be stocked with beer and soda and pizzas and meat and all that kind of stuff. So we're actually lighter than the average person because I just decided to take the freezer out. We store it. I have my toolboxes in there. I only have two. They're plastic. They're very light. One's for electrical stuff, one's for regular. A couple of shelves in there. One of the heavier things that we picked up along the way, and sometimes you don't think about the heavy things when you're doing your analysis first, is these are called, I love them, they're called Road Warrior, and they're real thick black plastic. They go underneath our pads here. We have snap pads down there, but every once in a while you're in an area where you need even a bigger footprint, or worse yet, I might need to put those under my tires if I'm too high up in the air. I probably use them the most for that. There's a bin in there for some bicycle parts. We've got a suitcase in there, and on the other end is the sewer hoses. So far, nothing too exciting. Up above here, a little bit more tools. We've got a little portable heater here, which I've never actually had to use, in case we ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time and froze our water bay. Once again, just screws and parts and filters and def. A couple of the bigger tools like a pipe wrench or something that you might need if you've got to crank in your slide assembly. Parts and chemicals like sprays and silicones. This bay here is a fun one to open up because it proves to you that there's always something. Right now we have a leak that I have to deal with, but I got more important things to do. I got to make this video. This bay here is nothing more than the different chemicals and sprays and different bottles of stuff that you have to carry. We'll talk a little bit about the weight of the hitch that you're going to have on your motorhome. You have to include that weight when you're talking about your carrying capacity and your towing capacity. This little extra attachment here. And one thing I want to mention here, in case I forget to talk about it later, there's a thing called a hitch rating, and then there's actually the towing capacity rating, and they might be different. Your towing capacity could actually be lower than your hitch rating, and we'll talk about that when we get inside. As you start RVing and you get past the newbie stage, there's stuff that you're going to pick up that you got to carry somewhere, and that on-the-go water softener is not exactly light, as well as our clear source, the hoses. All of this stuff starts to add up. So today's discussion, I decided to just use two Newmar products. And that's basically because I can talk about our personal experience in our 2014 Newmar Dutch Star, and I'll talk about the high-end GAWR, which is the Baystar right now, to compare the two and how you use those numbers. And the first thing that trips people up when they're looking at a used one is they don't have any good data. They don't have a way to get what the cargo carrying capacity is, what the gross vehicle weight rating is, what the combined weight rating is. And the minute they start Googling, if you end up on the wrong site and somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, you could have a problem. And I would even say, take with what I'm going to tell you with a grain of salt, because I'm trying to be as accurate as I can, but I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy that's been riding around in my RV. When we were looking at a 14, one of the first things I discovered was that on Newmar Corporation owner-tools/brochures dash archive, you could actually find every single Newmar brochure that still exists. And look at this column here. But certainly for the 2014, if I was to click on this, what I would get would be this PDF. Now, along the left-hand column here is all the different things about your prospective one that you're looking at. But what you really want to concentrate right in the beginning, you don't want to fall in love with the new car smell or the new RV smell. You don't want to fall in love with the floor plan. You don't want to fall in love with anything yet until you check these numbers out. Because I'm here to tell you that when Sue and I walk around in these lots, because we've been doing this long enough, because we've looked at these charts enough, we know that there are certain ones that literally are only good for weekending. And the minute you load them up too much to do a lot of camping, called a sum timer, you're possibly overloaded. And if you are trying to full time in it, you could be grossly overloaded. And that's kind of a dangerous situation. So when we looked at our model, one of the things you want to pay attention to is if you're looking at a particular floor plan, and here's our floor plan here, in the column down here, it will show you the tank capacities. And I think typically you just want to work with the fresh water tank capacity, because it gets a little tough when you're trying to include the weight of the gray or the sewerage. You don't intentionally drive away with those tanks full or partially full, and you don't intentionally have them partially full and have a full tank of water. But I'm telling you, every combination that I just explained, sooner or later you're going to do. So to keep it simple, on your weight calculations, just fill it with water at 8.34 pounds and we'll call it a day. It's got a picture of the motorhome, the different model numbers, and these are the numbers you want to be familiar with. Now, I know your eyes have just glossed over. I've tried to simplify it so we can all understand it. Remember, the numbers that are in this chart or in this picture here, I just got from the chart I showed you. Now, the gross combined weight rating for an RV is just that. It is the encompassing gross of what everything weighs, or what everything can weigh. It's not like you want to shoot for this number. This is the worst case number. And once you get to this point, you're going to have the worst performance. You're going to have the worst gas mileage, you name it. So you want to stay under this as much as possible. Gross vehicle weight rating for your RV is this number. So the whole shooting match can be this number, but the RV can get as heavy as this. And that assumes that you don't violate any of the axle ratings. If you don't violate any of the axle ratings and you have things distributed enough, you could actually go up to this point. Now, isn't it coincidental and simple? If you look down at this line here, if you take the whole shooting match, the combined weight, and you subtract the maximum weight that it will allow you the RV to be, that in fact it says, hey, that's what you got left over, Mark. Your tow capacity is 10,000 pounds. Now, it isn't necessarily that easy sometimes, because sometimes subtracting this number from this number could possibly violate this connection here and the rating of the hitch. Now, as it turns out, the rating of the hitch on our Dutch Star is rated for 10,000 pounds. When we subtract these two numbers, we do get to 10,000 pounds, and we are easily able to pull our Honda. The way they get the amount of cargo that you can put in your RV, and remember, your cargo is your lovely travel partner. It's me, it's our food, it's our underwear, it's our toothpaste, it's every single fluid that we have in our tanks at that point, everything that you've ever bought, every t-shirt, you name it. That is your cargo that you're carrying. And the way they've got this broken down here, and I've got these little arrows as if I was on a scale, and if I weigh my whole RV with just fuel in it, from the charts that I showed you from Newmar, the unloaded vehicle weight, the UVW, for my RV is 35,600. If I go down here, the entire rating weight for my RV, and that they'll allow, and I take out the weight that they say my RV weighs empty, except with full of diesel fuel. Remember, I'm not sitting in it yet. They will allow me, and the reason they say APP, that's an abbreviation for approximate, they say that the approximate net carrying capacity is the difference between those two numbers right here. And yes, we have a very large cargo capacity, 9,000 pounds. Now, if that's all you understood about this process, and you would go on your merry way and you go, oh my God, I got to get myself a Dutch Star because, I'm going to put that 9,000 pounds in there, no problem, because I'm going to carry a turret lathe or something in here. I'm cautioning you that you could have a problem, and here's why. If you go to the back area of your driver's seat, and on that tag, and you will see on our rig, it is 7,305 pounds. Now, once again, half of our audience is going, I wish I had that. And we're thankful we do have that. But look at, if you didn't understand that the as-built OCCC, occupant, cargo, carrying capacity, if you didn't understand that the OCC drops like a rock from the catalog rating, you could have an issue. Not so much on the big boys here, because eventually we get to the point where we have so much capacity we can't even use it. But as you go down in the product line and then you drop into the gassers, which is a whole different price point, it's a whole different frame, that's when you can get into trouble. If you were to look at our cargo carrying capacity, from the charts, they say I have 9,000 pounds, but I just showed you the wall sticker is only good for 7,305. So guess what? The old Chan man only ended up with 81% of what was in the catalog. So if I was talking to you in a campground, I'd say, hey, don't count on any more than 81%, because that's been my experience. Why did that number go down? It went down because we probably have a heavier, more fancy refrigerator, maybe than the standard model. It certainly went down because we optioned in the washer and the dryer. If you optioned in the dishwasher, all of these things start stacking up and that number starts to go. Now, I can tell you that recently on irv2.com, I had somebody contacted me when I had said something about this leading up to this video. I was already learning things, and you know, I like to contribute on IRV2. So I said something about how my percentage was only 81%. And this person shared that their Canyon Star was only 67%. So as built, when they finally got it, they only got 67% of what the catalog said that they were going to have for cargo carrying capacity. Now, I was thinking about using as a bogey that I would caution you guys to use. I was going to use 70% here, but I didn't want to go that low and get you know, criticized too much for it in the comments. We go on the base star here. The gross combined for the whole shooting match is 30,000. They're saying, okay, now that you know what the whole weight, and remember, this number is important because it's saying you can be 30,000 going on the road because you only have brakes here, you have brakes here, you should have brakes here and here. That's getting a signal from this thing when these brakes should go on. And so you have 4 axles of brakes, and all of the calculations in the engineering department says, yes, we can handle that if you're 30,000 pounds. Your engine can handle it. Your transmission can handle it. Your cooling system can handle it. Your suspension, your sway bars, you know, a lot of complex complications went in there. Well, the unloaded vehicle weight, the UVW, is 21,765. And this is some particular trim level that they have decided as a company is going to be their standard. They might have a rule. I don't know this. They might have a rule that says that number is never going to have the washer dryer option in it. I would almost bet that. I'd probably bet you $10. But I don't know that for sure, but I can tell you that look at this as a somewhat stripped weight and look at the weight that you're going to end up at as the realistic weight. And when I'm telling you that you take what they say this whole mass here in the front can be, and you're taking the stripped weight away from it down here to come up with your net cargo carrying capacity, that means that this number is somewhat unrealistic because it's a stripper. So if you're going to put washer dryer and there are different things, the Chan Man is saying beat that number down by maybe 25% and hang your hat on this number and you'll be in a lot better shape. This cargo mark is always increasing.
Oh,
and
geez.
I'm not sure why, but I'm going to investigate that. This cargo is pretty much staying the same. Now on our 14 Newmar Dutch Star, we don't have any propane, and our fresh water is 105. Now here's the important thing from today's video, is this personal stuff. I did not pull this out of the hat. I probably have weighed my rig at Cat Scales and at National Indoor and Freightliner. I had it weighed at the FMCA rally a number of times, and we're very particular on our record keeping so that we can understand these numbers. It doesn't do any good if you just got a pile of numbers. And I'm here to tell you that we have an extremely honest 2,000 pounds of stuff that we carry to be able to full-time RV comfortably without carrying much of anything extra, like in the way of hobbies or anything. So I'm telling you, when you're doing your calculations, don't kid yourself that, yeah, you know, 650 pounds, that sounds like a lot of storage. I'm telling you, you can't believe how heavy toothpaste is and your underwear. So that's our 2,000. So the Mark and Sue cargo in the 14 Dutch Star is 3,221 pounds. 9,000 pounds is what the brochure would have said. My wall after it was built was 7305. I only ended up with 81%. So if I didn't have this accurate information to give you, and I was talking to you in a campground, and I would have said, hey, you should just use 75% of what's in the catalog. Now I can tell you that when you're starting with a big boy and they start putting dishwashers and washers and dryers and thing in there, you're starting out with such a big number. When you're adding things that weigh a couple 100 pounds here and a couple 100 pounds there, the percentage that you're whacking away at your cargo carrying capacity number doesn't drop as fast as it does on something like the Baystar, because the number that you have to work with in the beginning is so much smaller that when you still put the same thing in, a 150 pound washer, it can really affect your numbers. So the Baystar model that I chose out of the charts was the 3626. What will be available after it's built? Well, if you use the Mark and Sue's rig percentage of 81%, this is what you should count on. Don't count on that, count on this. But if you want to use the Mark and Sue bogey, use this. But you know what? This guy that contacted me about his Canyon Star, and he ended up with this, I don't know. You figure out what you want to use. But I'm telling you, don't use that. When we're talking about the tow capacity, remember I talked about you have to watch that you don't violate any of the many rules. You don't violate this blob here being more than this weight. You don't violate any of the values that are for the axle load ratings in the charts. You don't violate ever getting bigger than this total value of all your equipment rolling down the road. But what happens is, if you have this number to work with and you subtract your weight of your unoptioned rig here, and you come up with this number down here that says your cargo carrying capacity, and let's say you're even smart enough to decrease the bogey here to this, if somehow you are able to actually in real life put way less of this in here, then some of that towing capacity you can use here. Because remember, this towing capacity is calculated a couple of ways, and you always take the smaller of the two. This number, everything going down the road, the most your RV can ever weigh with all the stuff in it, that's your towing capacity. Now, in my case, on the 2014 Newmar Death Star, this hitch here is rated for 10,000 pounds. So no matter what I do here, this can never go over 10,000 pounds. And when I just do the simple math of subtracting these two, that's what I get. The analysis for this one in the the Baystar will be the same, where I have to subtract from the towing rating 400 pounds, which is all of this stuff, to come up with the weight of the vehicle that I can really tow. We talked about how the gross amount you can tow for the whole shoot and match, the weight of the RV and everything in it is limited here. You always want to make sure that you don't violate any axle ratings here, because you could be less than this, but if all of this weight was on this axle, trust me, you're going to overload this axle. Or if all this weight was up here, all this weight has to be somewhat reasonably distributed. Now, when you subtract these two, you only get 4,000 pounds. And the first thing that's going to happen is the 170 people that are watching this, and they're going, hey, my tow bar My hitch back here says it's got a 5,000 pound hitch rating on it. And I believe you. I believe you that it has that. But you have to remember, these hitch manufacturers, they're not going to make a hitch that is a a 2,000 and a 2,500 and a 3,000 and a 3,500 and a 4,000 and a 4,500 and a 5,000. Newmar or somebody will make the decision, we're putting this hitch on. We understand your hitch has a rating, but guess what? Our contraption has a rating here, and we're saying when you subtract these two, you get 4,000 pounds, even though there might be a sticker on the hitch that it's 5,000 pound. The horizontal pulling rating of the transmission, the motor, the cooling system, the brakes, the axles, everything is only 4,000 pounds. Now, I've seen on RV2 where a number of people will, I don't want to say cheat, they'll work with the system. They'll work with the system where if you can't violate this number going down the road, but if you end up with, in this example, if you ended up well less than 1,000 pounds less than this, and if your hitch here is rated at 5,000 pounds, you could say that, because I'm not at this value, because I've got a low value here, I'm going to add it in so that I can pull 5,000 pounds if this hitch has a 5,000 pound rating on it. I'm not saying I necessarily am comfortable with that or agree with it. Call more than the dealer. The dealer will tell you anything. If you have any concerns, if you want to go, just by subtracting these two numbers, you want to go over this value, you need to talk to Newmar directly. Not your dealer, not your next door neighbor, not somebody on Facebook, and certainly not a YouTube channel. This is where, when you're always at one end of the price point, that you start to see that the compromises that you have to make. And you certainly don't want to have the compromise, I can't afford a Dutch Star, so I'm not going to do this. Trust me, you're going to see everything that we have and will see, and you're going to have just as much fun. You just have to do it differently. We tow a fairly heavy car, the Honda Odyssey. And I did discover the same type of thing where we're talking about where the cargo carrying capacity needs to be chipped away, and I'm telling you the Chanman bogie would be 75%. You kind of got to do that when you're looking at your curb weighting rating of your car too, because I noticed that when I went in and I said, what's the curb rating for a 2013 Honda Odyssey? I got a number. And then I immediately went outside and I looked at the sticker in the door frame, and wouldn't you know it, mine is heavier. So on the Baystar example here, if I stick with the 4,000 pounds here, and remember that was the difference between this number and this number, which I think is the preferred way that Newmar would want you to think about it, that in fact you would be only able to tow a 3,600 pound vehicle. This is the only way to discover what you can tow. Don't believe the dealerships when you go there, because they will gladly sell you anything, okay? You can see all the different years, okay? So let's scroll over to the Jeep. Sure enough, you can tow the Jeeps and all of the different transmission options, different restrictions. But look at the weights of that thing. 46, 43, 46. And remember, approximate curb weight. So if you're hanging your hat on the Wrangler and it's starting out at 39.19, you are already 300 pounds over the rating of your hitch that we just looked at, because of the tow bar and the bikes and all that kind of stuff. And that's the curb weight. So you got to add X number of hundreds back on there for the options. So you got to be real careful. So guess what? You start scrolling down here and you go, oh, I see why a lot of people tow the Kia Forte GT. It's $29.84. 3-4 weeks ago, where we were talking about all of the costs, you can send to us at our email, which is ourjourneyinmiles@gmail.com, and you can request that spreadsheet for free, no strings attached, so that you can poke around on it and see what your budget would be if you're going to RV, whether it's weekends, part-time, full-time, sometime, whatever. Then based on that, you can just, for the fun of it, a couple of weeks later, we did the video where we talked about new or used and how it's impacted us. So that wraps up today's video, and we appreciate everybody that has stayed this long and watched. If you want to help our channel, we would appreciate it if you would give us a thumbs up if you like the video. It really helps if you subscribe, whether or not you stop in every week or not. It makes YouTube understand that we're worth enough that somebody actually would subscribe. And if we see you on the road, that's great. If we see you in a campground, that's even better. And even better than that, it's if we end up going out to eat with you, like we did just recently, yesterday, with subscribers that contacted us, and we went out to eat with them.
Thanks, Mario and Christy.
Yeah. But if all we get is for you to stop in and visit us on Sunday and watch a video like this, we'll take that too. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.